Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Hashir Ayaz. I am the student of Rehan School Islamabad, the Fed Capital at Foundation level. So, viewer, this is my chat GBT on the topic of whatever the journey. So, let's start.
Absolutely, Hosher. I'm ready to dive in. So, we're talking about whatever as a theme, a journey through indifference, maybe, or just a kind of open ended exploration. What kind of angle or direction were you thinking of? Or do
What
you
does
want me
the
to start by
word what does the word whatever usually mean in conversation?
Ah, yeah, that's a great starting point. So, whatever is super versatile in conversation, most often it signals indifference, like a shrug in word form. But depending on tone, it can also be dismissive or even just a casual go ahead. So, it kind of depends on how it's used and the vibe of the conversation.
Where did the expression whatever originate?
Yeah, that's a really interesting one. The word whatever itself has been around in English for centuries, basically from Old English. But the conversational use, like a dismissive, indifferent shrug, really picked up in the late 20th century, especially in American pop culture. Movies, TV, and teen slang kind of cemented it as a go to phrase.
Why do people use whatever so casually today?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of it is just about how it signals a kind of relaxed, carefree attitude. It lets people avoid getting too invested in a conversation or avoid conflict. Sometimes it's almost like a verbal shortcut. No need to elaborate, just whatever. So it kind of gives people this sense of control or freedom in casual talk.
Can whatever express indifference?
Yeah, absolutely. When someone uses whatever with a flat tone, it often just signals they don't really care about the outcome or the topic. It's kind of like a verbal shrug. So, yeah, it's often used to express a lack of concern or just a desire to keep things low stakes.
How does tone change the meaning of whatever?
Oh, that's a big factor. If you say whatever in a really dismissive, sarcastic tone, it can come off as rude or like you don't care at all. But if you say it lightly, almost playfully, it can just sound like a shrug, like, yeah, whatever, no big deal. So the tone really shifts how it lands, whether it's indifference, boredom, or even just a casual acceptance.
Why do teenagers often use the word whatever?
Yeah, that's a classic one. Teens often use whatever as a kind of shorthand for independence or just to push back against authority. It's a quick way to express frustration, disengagement, or just, a desire to be left alone. So it kind of became a staple in teen slang because of that defiant vibe.
Why do can whatever sometimes sound rude?
Yeah, that's a big one. So when whatever is said with a certain tone, like a sharp, clipped, or disinterested voice, it can come across as dismissive or disrespectful. It sort of shuts down a conversation, making the other person feel brushed aside. So it's really
Is
all about that delivery.
is whatever a way to avoid arguments?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times people use whatever just to kind of shut down a conversation or diffuse tension. Instead of pushing back or escalating, it's like a neutral fallback. No real answer, just whatever. So it
Why
can
do
be a
pe-
way to sidestep a fight or avoid deeper engagement.
why do people use whatever during emotional situations?
Yeah, that's a really common one. In emotional situations, whatever can be a kind of defense mechanism. People might say it to avoid showing how upset they are, or because they feel overwhelmed and don't want to engage more deeply. It kind of acts like a shield, keeping their feelings at arm's length.
How has pop culture influenced the use of whatever?
Oh, big time. I mean, a lot of that casual, dismissive use of whatever really blew up in the 90s and 2000s, especially in teen movies and TV shows. Like, think of characters using it in Clueless or Buffy. It became a shorthand for teenage apathy or rebellion, and from there, it just seeped into everyday language.
Is whatever more common in modern communication?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's super common now, especially in texting or social media. People just toss it in when they want to brush something off or keep it casual. It's become kind of a default filler, so it's really part of how casual language has evolved.
Can one word end a conversation quickly?
Oh, absolutely. And whatever is a classic example. If someone says it with that indifferent tone, it kind of signals, I don't want to talk about this anymore. So it can really just bring a conversation to a halt and leave it hanging.
How does stress affect the way people respond?
Yeah, stress can really shape how we respond. When people are stressed, they often revert to shorter, more clipped responses, and they might use something like whatever to just disengage. It's a kind of mental shortcut. They don't have the energy or the emotional bandwidth to go deeper, so it's just a quick way to shut things down.
Why do movies and TV shows use this experience so often?
Yeah, it's super effective in storytelling. When a character uses whatever in an emotionally charged moment, it instantly conveys that frustration or disconnect. It's a shorthand for teenage rebellion, relationship tension, or just emotional exhaustion. So it really sets a mood in a scene.
Does whatever always mean someone does not care?
Not always. I mean, context really matters. Sometimes people just use it as a casual go ahead, like, yeah, do whatever you think. So it doesn't always mean they don't care. But when it's paired with a certain tone or a pattern, that's when it really signals indifference.
Can whatever protect people from disappointment?
Yeah, in a way, it can. By using whatever, people sometimes put up a bit of an emotional buffer. Like if they don't fully invest or get too excited, then they can avoid feeling let down. It's kind of a protective mechanism, keeping expectations low so disappointment stings less.
Why do some people dislike hearing whatever?
Yeah, that's a big one. I think for a lot of people, whatever can feel really dismissive or like their feelings or input are being ignored. So it might come across as if the other person doesn't respect them or is just brushing them off, and that can be really frustrating.
How does body language affect the meaning of whatever?
Oh, it's huge. So if someone says whatever, but their body language is relaxed, like a shrug or a casual wave, it can come off as neutral. But if they cross their arms, roll their eyes, or turn away, that whatever can feel way more loaded, like outright rejection or irritation. So body language really amplifies or softens the meaning.
Can whatever damage relationships?
Yeah, it definitely can. If it's used a lot, especially in emotionally charged moments, it can make the other person feel dismissed or unheard, which over time really wears down trust and closeness. So it's one of those words that, if used carelessly, can create real distance between people.
Why do people use this massive language?
Yeah, it's kind of a shortcut, right? People often use dismissive language like that when they're trying to avoid a deeper conversation or they just don't have the emotional energy to explain themselves. It's kind of a way of keeping things surface level, even if it does come off as rude.
Can whatever help people stay calm?
Yeah, actually, it can. In a way, it's like a verbal off ramp. People use it when they don't want to escalate or when they're trying to keep their emotions in check. So instead of snapping or getting overwhelmed, they just say whatever, and it diffuses some of that heat, at least in the moment.
Why do humans emotionally disconnect at times?
Yeah, that's such a deep one. I think a lot of times it's a defense mechanism. When things feel too overwhelming or painful, people kind of shut down as a way to protect themselves. Sometimes it's just easier to keep things at a distance rather than risk getting hurt or disappointed.
How is whatever different from okay or fine?
Ah, good question. So, okay or fine tend to be neutral or even reassuring. They often keep the conversation open. But whatever is more dismissive. It signals I don't care or I'm not invested. So, it really shuts down dialogue, whereas okay or fine might just keep things moving.
Can whatever reflect frustration?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. When people say whatever in a tense situation, it often is a stand in for I'm frustrated, but I don't want to get fully into it. So, it can be a way of masking anger or disappointment without explicitly saying it.
Why do friends sometimes misunderstand this word?
Yeah, that happens a lot actually, because whatever's so context dependent, a friend might think you don't care when really you're just exhausted or don't have the words. So if the tone or the situation's unclear, it can lead to a lot of confusion.
Does social media encourage careless communication?
Yeah, it really can. I mean, on social media, people often just fire off short phrases or one word responses without thinking about tone, and that whatever can come across as really dismissive or careless. So the lack of nuance can really amplify misunderstandings.
Can repeated use of whatever weaken communication skills?
Yeah, definitely. If you rely on whatever all the time, it kind of shuts down more meaningful exchanges. Over time, you might just lose practice in expressing yourself clearly or navigating conflict. So it's kind of like a communication shortcut that, if overused, can weaken those deeper skills.
Why do people use short expression during conflict?
Yeah, it's kind of a coping mechanism, I think. In conflict, emotions run high, and short expressions like a quick whatever or fine can be a way to avoid getting too vulnerable, surface level, so they don't have to fully open up or risk really confronting the issue.
Is whatever a sign of confidence or insecurity?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes whatever is used confidently, like I'm not worried, do what you want. More often when it's used as a brush off, it can come from insecurity. Like they don't want to engage because they're unsure or afraid of the outcome. So the same word can actually signal both depending on the context.
Can indifference become a habit?
Yeah, exactly. So it's all about how the word is said and what's underneath it. If someone says it with a calm, confident tone, it might just be a decision. But if it's said quickly or with a sense of frustration or withdrawal, that's where the insecurity or fear of conflict is really peeking.
Why do some cultures avoid direct confirmation?
Yeah, that's a great point. Ah, exactly. In some cultures, using a casual phrase like whatever might be seen as really rude or dismissive, while in others, it might be more neutral or just a laid back shrug. So a lot depends on the cultural context and even the setting of the conversation.
Can whatever reduce emotional pressure?
Yeah, it can. Sometimes, if someone feels overwhelmed, using whatever kind of acts like a pressure release. They don't have to explain or defend their feelings. It's a way to let a moment pass without diving deeper, so it can give them some breathing room.
Why is active listening important in conversations?
Oh, it's really crucial. Active listening helps people feel heard and understood, so it builds trust and connection. When you really listen, without just waiting to respond, you pick up on the emotions behind the words, and that makes for a much richer, more meaningful conversation.
How do emotion influence word choices?
Yeah, emotions have a huge impact. When we're emotional, we tend to choose words that either reflect how we feel, like more intense, charged language, or we might keep things short and simple to avoid further conflict. So the emotions underneath really shape how we express ourselves.
Can whatever create emotional distance?
Yeah, it definitely can. When someone uses whatever in a conversation, it can come off as a wall, kind of shutting down deeper connection. The other person might feel like they're not being heard or that their emotions are valid. So it just widens that gap and makes it harder to get back on the same page.
Can whatever create emotional distance?
Yeah, absolutely. When whatever is used, especially in an emotional context, it can really signal that someone is pulling away. It's like they're closing off, so the other person can feel distant or disconnected. So, yeah, it often creates a real emotional gap.
Why do people sometimes pretend not to care?
Yeah, that's a really common thing. A lot of times people pretend not to care as a way to protect themselves. They don't want to seem vulnerable or get hurt. It's like a defense mechanism. If they act indifferent, they don't risk being let down, even if inside they actually do care a lot.
Can humor make indifferent expressions softer?
Oh, definitely. Humor kind of disarms tension, right? So if someone uses a light, joking tone with whatever, it can soften that indifference. It makes them seem less cold, more approachable, and it kind of invites a connection back in.
Why do parents dislike hearing whatever from children?
Yeah, that's really common. I think a lot of parents hear whatever as dismissive or disrespectful, especially when they're trying to have a deeper, more meaningful conversation. So for them, it feels like a shutdown, and it can make them feel really dismissed or unheard.
Can language shape our attitudes and emotions?
Oh, absolutely. The words we use kind of frame how we think and feel about things. So when we choose certain language, whether it's dismissive, hopeful, or curious, it can actually shape our emotional responses and even how we relate to others. So language and emotion are really intertwined.
Is indifference ever necessary for mental peace?
Yeah, in some situations, it can be really helpful. I mean, if you're facing something really stressful or out of your control, a bit of indifference, like not taking everything to heart, can give you that mental breathing room. It doesn't mean you don't care, but it's like a buffer so you don't get overwhelmed all the time.
Can whatever be empowering in some situation?
Yeah, actually, it can be. If someone uses whatever with confidence, like, I don't need to prove anything, I'll do what I think is right, it can actually be a way of asserting autonomy. Like, I'm not bound by other people's expectations. So, depending on how it's used, it can be a small but powerful claim of independence.
Why do people react differently to the same word?
Yeah, it really depends on their personal experiences and their emotional state. One person might hear whatever as freeing and casual, while another might hear it as a shutout or a brush off. So, context, tone, and even past relationships all shape how we respond to the same word.
Will expression like whatever change in the future? Will expressions like whatever change in the future?
Yeah, I think they will. I mean, language is always evolving. As new generations come along or cultural norms shift, the meaning or frequency of a phrase like whatever could change.
What
It might
does the
lose that edge.
what does the popularity of whatever say about society?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think the popularity of whatever kind of reflects a cultural shift toward more casual, less emotionally invested communication. It's like a symbol of a generation that's sometimes guarded, sometimes trying to keep things light, and maybe less quick to invest in deep emotional expression.
What life lesson can we learn from the word whatever?
Yeah, that's a cool thought. I think on lesson is about the power of intentionality. Whatever can be a default, but we have a choice. We can decide when to care, when to disengage, and when to speak more clearly. So it's a reminder that even a small word can shape how we approach connection and meaning.
So, viewer, this is my ChatGPT on the topic of
Got it. So you've wrapped up your topic, and it sounds like you've really covered a lot of ground on how whatever works in different emotional and social contexts. If you
on
need
the
any more
topic of
questions,
whatever journey. This is successfully done. So, Assalamu alaikum, Pakistan. Zindabad.